Happy to see you twice in one day. If you joined us this morning, you happened to see a great conversation we had with Amy Edelstein about managing our children's anxiety during this time that we're social distancing. If you missed that, you can easily access it by checking out our Facebook page. It will be there for you to watch at any time, and I fully encourage you to share it. It was lots of great information Amy shared, and definitely will be helpful. We are back today because we felt it was important to share a second conversation today, which really has to do with safety and safety of our children, safety of individuals in our community. April happens to be a time when we focus on, lots of different important issues. One of them for us, as you've been hearing in our Facebook Lives, is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Our Healing Space program and programs like it around the country use this month to raise awareness. Although we do it every day, we use this month to raise some focused awareness around sexual violence. It also happens to be Child Abuse Prevention Month, which made it a good reason for us to invite Nydia Monagas, Dr. Monagas, to join us today. She's the Executive Director of the New Jersey Children's Alliance, which is a statewide nonprofit, and the mission is to promote child advocacy centers throughout the state, their training, resources, advocacy, and leadership. She also happens to be a clinical specialist at the McCormick Center for Child Advocacy and Policy at Montclair State University, where I also teach. So we've known each other for many years. She's a trusted and wonderful colleague, and so happy to have her here to talk today about some of the challenges. We have put this sheltering in place to keep us safe from the virus, but in doing that, we've not necessarily kept us safe from other challenges that exist out in our society, and one of them happens to be child abuse. It's very, very obvious and it's very strong potential that children right now are locked in their homes with their abusers, and their well-being is at stake. And it's important that we talk a little bit about this issue, raise some awareness, and see if it's knowledge is important, because you never know when information might come past you that would be able to help save a life. And it's, I think, all of our civic obligation to stay as educated as possible on these issues, even though you may say, I'm not a social worker, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a specialist in this area. But as Nydia and I can tell you from our long experience in doing this work, the first phone call usually doesn't come from one of those people. The first phone call comes from your average person in our society, in our communities, that identifies something that seems off or a concern. And then from there, help and interventions are able to go in place. So you do have the power to save a life. And this is an opportunity for you to learn more about how you can do that. So Nydia, thank you for joining us. Before we jump into the conversation, can you tell us a little bit about the New Jersey Children's Alliance, since some folks on the call may or may not be familiar with it?
Sure. As you mentioned, we are a statewide nonprofit, and our focus is really to help support the child advocacy centers in the state of New Jersey. We are working on ensuring that every child in every county in our state has access to a child advocacy center, which we fondly call CACs. And that's really been our focus for the past several years since I've been on. When I came on, we had 8 centers, and we are quickly working on our 21 by 21 initiative to have 21 county-based child advocacy centers by 2021, which is around the corner. And I'm happy to report that we are there. All 21 counties at this point, at the very least, have funding to develop their facilities to have a child advocacy center in every county.
For someone on the call, on the live today watching, who doesn't know what a child advocacy center is, could we give them a little information about that?
Yeah, so it's the place. It's a child-friendly facility that the kids go to when they report abuse, particularly cases of severe physical abuse, severe neglect, sexual abuse, cases in which we're going to have law enforcement and prosecution and child protective services involved. And so it's that facility that the kids go to share their story. It's where their healing begins. It's based on a foundation of the multidisciplinary team approach, which we call MDT, in case I kind of slip and use the terminology. And the MDT is made up of child protective services, law enforcement, prosecution, victim advocacy, medical, mental health, and child protective services, who all come together. They convene and they coordinate their response to cases to ensure that kids get all the services that they need, and then they're not re-traumatized by a system that's really meant to protect them.
Well, and we're very lucky that we, have these programs here in New Jersey because they really do provide a resource and an opportunity for children and families to be serviced in the most holistic and supportive way possible, and not get re-traumatized by our systems, which, although we don't intend, sometimes can happen when we're not working together and collaboratively. So, Nydia, tell us a little bit about the national trends in child abuse and neglect, and also what we're seeing locally here in New Jersey.
So we know that child abuse has really been discussed as a public health problem for a long time now. Just looking at basic numbers, in 2018, there was 2.4 million cases of child abuse that were documented nationally, with 770,000 victims. And again, this is national data. In New Jersey in 2018, 94,000 cases were investigated of child abuse and neglect. So those are, big numbers. Yeah. We know that abuse happens in the home most often, and that in most cases, the abusers are family members. We know that 1 in 10 children will be sexually abused by the time they turn 18 years old, and that 20% of children under the age of 8, 20% of those kids are under the age of 8 when they're first sexually abused. We know that when kids are abused and neglected, they are at greater risk for a wide range of problems, from academic issues and difficulties to mental health issues such as anxiety and depression. We see kids who are having difficulties with their peers, other kinds of social problems, experimenting with alcohol and drugs and those sorts of things. And then as they grow older, we see adult survivors who are struggling with similar issues with mental health and medical health. They're at increased risk for things like diabetes and, shorter lifespan, things we don't think about being related to that. We also see them, having difficulty maintaining jobs and just having stability overall. And so we know it's a real problem. That being said, we also know that when victims, survivors, thrivers, however we talk about them, come forward and get the help that they need, that they're just like any other person who's experienced other challenges in life, and that they can heal, that they can live happy, fulfilling, productive lives. But we need to just kind of get them to know that they have support systems out there so that they can come forward and share their stories.
Yep. Definitely. The resiliency of children, we know, exists, and there are these networks, and fortunately in New Jersey, because we have these child advocacy centers in place, we have the networks, especially trained professionals, to come together to be able to support them and move them to healing, for sure. So we happen to have on the line as well with us Julye Myner, who is the Executive Director of Center for Hope and Safety, which is our domestic violence shelter and program for Bergen County. It's a state designated program. Hi, Julye, welcome.
Hi.
How are you?
There we go.
Very good to have you with us. Thank you for joining us today. And we have Nydia with us as well. Nydia was just talking a little bit with us about child abuse and neglect and some of the national trends, that we're seeing. Nydia, right now, as we're, maybe before we jump into talking in detail about the pandemic and, its impact on all of these issues, Julye, can you take a moment and talk with us a little bit? Nydia just so eloquently shared the details around, how children, are abused, and the risk, of them being in the home, and how that complicates things significantly. Can you talk to us a little bit about domestic violence survivors and why this time is, again, we're working hard to stay safe from the virus, but it creates challenges for us in terms of safety in other areas, specifically for domestic violence survivors?
Thank you. Absolutely. We are very concerned about how vulnerable victims are at this point, and that includes both adults as well as children. The stress that we are all facing at this time, compounded with the isolation, the stay-at-home order, makes it it facilitates abuse to occur. As A.G. Graywall said about a week ago, it facilitates, or it's an ideal situation for an abuser to continue to abuse. And it's also making it very difficult for people to seek the help that they need right now, to reach out for help, for shelter, for counseling, and so forth. We do believe that domestic violence is rising as we speak. When there is an environmental stressor such as the one we are now experiencing, DV, domestic violence, does increase. It increases for approximately 2 years until we recover from that particular incident in our society. And yes, we have a lot of victims who are suffering right now. The children who are exposed to the violence happening in their homes, and having a voice that is muffled at this point. So I'm really trying to work with community advocates to spread the word about this issue, to be able to help to the extent that they can by educating our community about resources available to them, such as ours.
Yes, and that's why we were so committed to having this conversation today. Obviously, all of our work, our sexual violence work with adults, Nydia's, work with children, your work with domestic violence survivors, our work is all linked on a daily basis, which is,
Right.
makes a lot of sense. But people watching may not understand why that makes a lot of sense, why those dynamics are all connected. Nydia, do you want to share a little bit from what you see in the child abuse world and the connection to domestic violence and sexual violence? And
Yes, so I mean, as Julie said, these sheltering in place orders are leaving victims in, isolated in their homes without access to people who typically would help them. So while we're seeing that rise in domestic violence cases, we're not seeing that with our child abuse cases, right? These kids, so in March, for example, there was a 32% decrease from last March in the number of cases that came into the hotline. And in April, anecdotally, we're hearing that drop at 50%. And we know that that's not because abuse isn't happening. In fact, it's probably happening more because of all the stressors that Julie indicated. So we're also really worried. We also know that when domestic violence is happening, the likelihood of abuse is also greater. So in those same homes, kids are being exposed to that abuse. The RAIN, which is the Rape, Assault, Incest National Network, said that just this past month, they had record-setting numbers for minors calling their hotline. So yeah, they had over 50% of the hotline callers were children, which they're not typically accustomed to. And of those kids that called in, 67% said that their perpetrators were family members. And of those, 79% were living with their perpetrator at that time when they called in. So clearly these dynamics are just really fostering continued maltreatment in homes, which has us, just as Julie said, really, really worried. The other thing that we haven't mentioned is online safety, right? That's a whole nother area. Our kids are online more than ever these days, and the predators are too. And we know, again, I'm a statistics person. The National Center for Missing Children reported that just from last March to this March, the numbers doubled in the number of possible sexual exploitation cases online, from 1 million to 2 million this past March. So that's another whole area of predatory behavior that we're concerned about. And kids, again, are at risk and don't have access to those protective people who are making those calls. We know that 20% of our reporters come from educators. Kids aren't in schools. And the others come from, as Julie was saying, community providers, after school, sports, doctors, medical professionals, mental health professionals, and kids don't have access to these protective adults in their lives. So we're not seeing the numbers, and we're not seeing these kids, and they're just being continually exposed to that in their homes.
so, Julie, could you share a little bit about the domestic violence numbers? I mean, I think we have a great picture. Thank you, Nydia, for painting, where we stand with child abuse in the state for sure and nationally. And I know, it's by programs like ours, obviously, we've quickly come together in kind of a crisis network to make sure that we are trying to be creative and figure out ways to get information to individuals so that they can reach out for help, even though they're so confined right now and it's very challenging. But for the person who's watching that may not have an understanding of, this issue in our area, could you paint a picture for them, Julie?
Yes, and I do want to say that the reports of domestic violence have also dropped dramatically
Yeah.
over the past month, akin to those for child abuse.
Mhm.
Although we know that abuse is rising, the numbers aren't there to show it. People are not calling for help. It's last year for the past 4 weeks, the count is about $4,000. I think, no, not, let me go back a little bit. For the past month, we had about $2,000 DV reports, whereas last year at the same time it was 4,000. So we've seen a 50% decrease in
Mhm.
reports of domestic violence, which is also a call to action. As we know that this is happening, we need to be able to reach out to our victims. And so 1 in 4 women is impacted by domestic violence at a point in her life. 1 in 10 man is impacted by domestic violence in the state. Like I said, 4,000 per month is an astonishing number. And in Bergen County, there are approximately 3,600 reports per year. And again, keep in mind that reports don't actually show the extent to which a situation is happening. Underreporting is a significant issue. So it's a lot more. The majority of our murders in Bergen County are DV related. And by the majority, that's 95% and above. So it's lethal. It's a significant problem. It's been referred to as an epidemic, a silent epidemic. So now we have this silent epidemic within our health crisis, within the current pandemic, and it cannot be forgotten or buried even deeper. We really need to shine a lot of light on it. And thank you for helping with that.
Well, I'll
Yeah.
say, I actually was also on I think a different call than you were on last week with the Attorney General's office, and we were talking about the underreporting because I know all of our hotlines have seen a decline in reporting nationally. We've definitely seen that, which again would be, curious, but the reality of it is, to your average person might wonder why that is, but of course it's because, when you're sitting in your house with your abuser, in close proximity, it's not so easy to pick up your phone and make a phone call. So whether you're being sexually assaulted by them, whether it's domestic violence, whether, there's child abuse, it's not so easy to grab a phone. But as he so astutely shared, and grateful that we have leadership in New Jersey that understands these issues so clearly. It's once we get through this stage, once we get through what we are living through right now, we will be flooded. These the survivors will come out. The individuals right now that are not showing up at the police departments and the hospitals to share their stories, the children that are not being identified in the school systems because their teachers are not there to make a report that something looks off with them. These calls will all start, they will come, and we will be flooded. And as hard as we're working right now, and I know the three of us can attest that moving our programs remote, as we've had to for some of them, and others that are still very much in place, like your shelter, Julie, that's up and working with safe standards, in place. Um, as busy as we are right now, we know what's coming. We know what's coming,
Right.
and we're trying to, prepare ourselves.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about the people that are, anything you'd like to say about that before I jump to something else? Any thoughts on that issue?
Yeah, I mean, Julie was mentioning the call to action, and I think maybe this is where you were going with that, is what can we be doing now as opposed to waiting for that flood that we know is inevitable? Some of the things that we're doing, and thank you for participating in our Shine a Light on Child Abuse campaign, as it really brings light to all. There's so much co-occurrence between domestic violence and child abuse that it really brings light to both issues when we're talking about these things. But one of our calls is for those people who are seeing kids, what can they be doing, right? So this is the call to essential workers, right? Who are, and in New Jersey, we're all mandated reporters anyway. And so really we all have that civil responsibility to make a call when we see something. But now more than ever, the people who are seeing kids outside of their immediate families who they're sheltering in place with are those essential workers, like the grocery store workers, the food delivery people, pharmacy workers. Those are the ones that we're really calling on to just be looking and be more aware. They're not used to and accustomed to looking for signs and symptoms and making calls, but now more than ever, we need them to be aware of what some signs and symptoms are that they could be looking for, and to make that outreach if there are any concerns at all. Knowing that when you make a call to the hotline, it's not that you're making an accusation. You're at the very least just helping that family get support. We all know that we're in times of dire stress. families are stressed as it is, and this has really compounded that exponentially. And so if we can help them see that there are supports and services out there for them, it might help to minimize abuse that's happening in the home or address it sooner than before it gets to the point when we're seeing it, and the ones that we are seeing are the ones that are coming into the ER because they need medical attention. We want to get to it before it rises to that level. The other call to action is around those who are seeing kids virtually, right? So what can teachers who are seeing their kids virtually be doing? I know my kids are doing Zoom classes for their karate and for soccer and for all their sports. Coaches, what can they be looking for, and what signs and symptoms can they be concerned about, and just kind of raising their awareness that, again, we need you more than ever to be looking out for these kids and families. And if you are concerned, make sure that you share those concerns and call the hotline.
Julye, anything you want to share?
I would like to add that their hotline is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we encourage people who feel unsafe in their homes to call at the time that it is the safest for them to do so. It could be at 2 a.m. in the morning when the abuser is asleep, and we are there to take your call. We are actually taking a lot of calls at 6 a.m. and 7 a.m. in the morning, but it could be at any time. If it's safer for a victim to walk outside and make the call, that's okay too. Being trapped inside the home can be very dangerous. I also want to emphasize that making a call to Center for Hope and Safety does not need to entail going to the safe house. It could also be a way of getting counseling, support, assessing your risk in the home with the abuser, and also safety planning. Or just wondering whether or not you are in an abusive situation and you just need to talk with an advocate, somebody who can lend an ear and be there for you.
And I just want all of our viewers to know that we will link all of the hotline numbers here on this post for this live that we're doing right now. So you will have the number to make a 24/7 report of concern about child abuse, 24/7 support line if you are experiencing domestic violence or are concerned and want some information to support someone who might be. And as well for sexual violence for our Healing Space hotline, which is also 24/7 and available to provide support. So when we think about kind of going through this time and the community watching, and I know that, Nydia, as you referenced, and, we were so happy at the YWCA to be a part of the Shine a Light campaign. We look for these months during the year to raise attention, but as I think Julye said earlier, there's nothing like a crisis like this to, accelerate, the spotlight and the focus, on something and like this or like these issues and to really raise awareness to them. I think one of the challenges for all of our organizations right now, and I want to just put it out there for everyone to know, is that, we run on grants and donations, and they keep us going. And some of us have parts of our program that raise money to provide all of these essential services. This is also a time when we're not able to run those aspects of our organizations, and yet the three agencies you all see in front of you on TV right now are still pumping out the work and being there 110% for everyone in the community as they need to be. I want to encourage everyone watching to, consider if you are in an opportunity, do you have the ability to make a donation, to think about making one to any of our organizations. We all work together. Supporting one of us supports all of us is really the way that I always look at it. These issues of child abuse, sexual violence, and domestic violence are incredibly linked. And it's important that our community support our organizations so that we can continue to support you.
Well said, Helen. Thank you.
Thank you.
And
the community is our fuel. We're all in this together, so we need your support to continue to help.
Absolutely. And there are also a lot of great entities out there that are also, providing, other types of relief to survivors like ours. I know, Julie, actually, I'd like you to take a moment, Julie, before we do wrap up, to talk about Center for Hope and Safety. Nydia had the opportunity at the onset to share about her organization. It'd be wonderful for you to share the scope and the depth of the work that you all do at Center for Hope and Safety.
Thank you. Yes, we provide services to victims of domestic violence, including children, to help them be safe and rebuild their lives. We have a safe house where we house up to 40 women and children at any given time. And this is oftentimes the entry for many of our clients into our services. We provide counseling within the safe house. We also engage our residents in art therapy as a modality for healing. And we help them find permanent housing. And we connect them to various resources in our community to begin the rebuilding. We have a transitional housing program. Our clients may be able to move into one of those homes to give them up to 2 years to rebuild their lives so that they become economically strong and can sustain themselves and their children and no longer have to rely on an abusive situation or a relationship. To both clients in the Safe House as well as our transitional housing program, we link them to our economic empowerment team. They're provided with career counseling, housing counseling, and connected with a job developer to help them advance professionally with their careers and build their careers. We also offer financial literacy, which is a key component to their rebuild. We also have a Project Child program, which is a creative art therapy program, and it provides 6 months of individual art counseling as well as 6 months of group. It's incredibly impactful. It's data driven, and our kids are really healing when they are joining that program, and there's a lot of work happening with the abusive parent concurrently. We have a program that we call Community Services that helps non-residential clients. So these are victims who are still at home with their abusers or may have left one of our residences, and we continue to work with them to evaluate their safety, help them engage in healthy relationships, and also give them the basic resources that they need to be able to meet the needs of their family members. We have a community closet that we rely on community donations to maintain. And we help with food, with diapers, with cleaning supplies as we speak, and masks, whatever they may need, we are trying to help them. We also have our legal department, which we established approximately 3 years ago, and we have built a team of 3 attorneys and 2 legal administrators, and that program has been integral to maintaining the safety of our clients with quickly getting restraining orders to keep abusers away, and also to help with custody issues, child support, as well as some help with divorce. So we are a very connected team, providing a seamless approach to care to our clients. And our clients, we call them often our forever clients. We keep connected to them to the extent that they need our support to make sure that they live a life free of violence.
And I also want to make sure to shout out to our county alternatives to domestic violence. I know that they work very closely with us, with you, to also support domestic violence survivors and sexual violence survivors here locally in Bergen County. I also want to tell anybody watching that in case you are not from Bergen County, but you have a fear, a concern related to one of these issues, you can absolutely call our hotline in YWCA Northern New Jersey's Healing Space. You can call Julie's hotline. We will connect you elsewhere in the state where you need to go. Nydia is a statewide organization. If you call in to report child abuse, it is a statewide number. And if someone watching is from out of state, we also will make those connections for you as well. So please don't worry about having to do research. Just call the numbers that have already been listed on this uh, program at the bottom. It's already in one of the comments. And, we will connect you where you need to go. I also, before we close, want to make sure that everyone knows in terms of sexual violence support network and programming that YWCA Healing Space We did shut our office for a safety perspective on March 16th, but on March 17th, we were ready to go remote. Our 24/7 hotline has been without a misstep, has been in operation for anyone to call. And like Julie, calls can come in, like Julie's hotline calls can come in any hour of any day for support. Anyone who is receiving counseling services for us for their sexual violence experience, or someone who wants to call in now to receive those support services, all of our counseling services have moved to a HIPAA compliant remote platform. And by on March 17th, we've already moved to that direction. But you don't have to wait for the stay at home orders to be lifted. You can get counseling and support right now. You just need to make a phone call, whichever of our three entities, you need help. For us at Healing Space, we also have in place for you right now. Again, you don't have to wait. We have job vocational support services for sexual violence survivors. We have creative and therapeutic art services. That's mindfulness, yoga, art therapies in place for you right now, all ready to be provided for you remotely. And we also have a legal support network for you if you have any questions to assist. We've also been working on behalf of our survivors, those that are suffering with COVID and other issues, to connect them to services to get food and other types of assistance that they're needing at this time. All of our agencies and connections are able to assist with that too for our survivors. Like these other agencies, we spend a lot of time in our community, normally in schools, on college campuses, and high schools, in community groups, educating people on sexual violence, educating people on signs and symptoms, educating people on ways to be a upstander and to participate and support the community. All of those presentations have moved remote. We are able to do them for you, work with the schools, work with the high schools, work with college campuses, and work with the community. You just have to make a phone call, and we will connect you to any of those. So the message here for anyone watching, if hopefully we've educated you on some of the issues that you should be thinking about, and information and linkages in case you or someone might benefit from having this information. Again, when our agencies come in and support survivors, the first call very often, again, was not from a social worker, was not from a doctor. It was from a concerned person somewhere along the line who noticed something and made a phone call. You do have the ability to save a life. You do have the ability to change the trajectory of somebody's life. And all you need to know is know enough information to be able to make a call on their behalf. So please feel empowered. Please know that these organizations are here for our community every single day during crisis and not during crisis. And please reach out to them if we can support and help in any way. Nydia, Julie, any last comments before we sign off?
Stay safe,
just
stay
one
healthy.
thing.
Please take care of yourselves and your neighbors.
Yes, that's very good advice.
That's what I was going to say is, also we can also talk about prevention, and just, all of us just as people, as humans, is just check in on the parents in our lives, check in on the people that we know we were concerned about beforehand who were dealing with stressors, check in on the people who have young kids. We know that's particularly stressful, and now adding all the other stuff. So just check in, offer an ear. Doesn't mean that a report needs to be made. It's just there. Sometimes just venting can alleviate enough stress to not have something escalate, in that day anyway. And offer to be a support source for them and connect them to the many, many resources that we have in New Jersey. In addition to those hotlines, I want to identify the youth hotline, second floor, which is also 24/7 for youth to call. And it's confidential, anonymous, unless there's some life-threatening situation. They can call and get some support as well. So I think it's important for them to have a space
Great.
to reach out to.
If you email us that number when we hop off, we'll link it to this as well, and
Okay.
get in the comments for everyone to have. That's a wonderful resource.
Yes. We will get through this.
We will. And
we'll get through this together.
My fellow resistor sisters out there that are working so hard, and all of the people connected to your organizations and your work, grateful for you every day, but especially now. And it's important to do a little bit of extra self-care for us so that we can keep going for others too. So thank you for the work you do in the community. Thank you to all the people that are working with you. Thank you to all the agencies in the community that work with all of us. This really does take a village, and a little bit more than a village, to keep our communities and our individuals and our citizens safe. And we are thankful for everyone who works side by side, shoulder to shoulder, to do that every single day. And Facebook friends, we thank you again for taking the time, hopefully twice today, to join us. And we hope that you will join us tomorrow. We will be speaking with Denisa Moss-Heitlager, who's the Director of Marketing for McLaren Engineering, and Joanne Valley, who's a financial analyst. And together, we will be exploring a little bit about how women in corporate America are managing during this time at home. It's obviously different challenges in front of us, and we'll talk through them. And thank you, Pete Bozer. I see he has just put the second floor hotline number on as a comment. We're grateful to him. Another wonderful professional in our community working hard for these issues. So folks, stay well. As I say, mind your mind. When you need to check in. When you need to check out, take a little breather from everything going on around you and take care of yourselves. I know everyone's having a different time right now, depending on what's happening around you. But, we're here for you. All three of our agencies are here for you. Many, many more are here for you as well. Just place a call to any of us and we'll figure out who needs to stand with you to help support you. Take care, be well, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.